Hello, everybody, and welcome to this episode of Yellowtail Talks Tech. My guest today needs no introduction, but I'm going to introduce her anyway. It is, of course, Paloma Vilcius, co-founder and tech goddess. Can I say that? Tech goddess. We got a lot of really cool things to talk about today. First and foremost, I want to mention that we had just received accolades from Course Report for being one of the rising stars as per their guidelines and everything. One of the rising stars in the ever increasing world of boot camps and whatnot. And even though we don't like to call ourselves a boot camp because we're a little bit different, we're going to take it. So we want to first off, thanks to everybody at Yellowtail for making that happen. It takes a village, and that would be enough to be able to talk about and get excited about. But we have two other pretty big announcements here that you might have already seen, and that is that we have two new partnerships, and that's primarily what we're going to talk about today. Our first partnership is with Red Hat, and as you know, our Linux for Jobs, the coup de grace of the Linux for Jobs is getting your Red Hat certification as a Linux system administrator. And to be partnering with them, or to be kind of a part of their organization, lets us know that we are doing something right. They like what we're doing. I'm going to be talking to Paloma a little bit about what Red Hat is. And for those of you that don't know, we'll get a better understanding of that. Now, if that weren't enough, I mean, that in itself, that's pretty cool stuff. But there's even more, because the same thing is happening with AWS. And we are now partnering with AWS, or affiliated with AWS, as somebody that just flat out knows what they're talking about when it comes to AWS cloud engineering. We've been teaching that for a little while now. Those are our two programs, and to have the support of the two companies that we base our programs on is pretty phenomenal. So Paloma, I know you are excited, and I want to first off thank you for taking a break in your vacation to come and talk to us. I know that the tacos await, so we should probably just get right down to business, huh?
Yes. So as Ram said, I'm currently on vacation in Mexico City, and I've been eating my way through the city since last Thursday with my daughter and husband. But I think it was a good idea to take this time to join the podcast for the first time. And also, it's my first podcast. So I may look a little nervous, and it's because I am nervous, but guess what? Even people with many years of IT experience still get imposter syndrome. But I'm at the point where I just acknowledge that the feeling is there, and I work through it.
There you go. And that's what you got to do. And God, I remember, like, when I started my career and everything, getting up in front of a group and speaking was the most horrifying thing that could have ever happened. And I've done it so much in the past 20 years now that I actually enjoy it now. So
Yeah.
It's kind of weird. I think, it's like anything. The more you do it, the more it becomes habit and everything. So, but yeah, that's cool of you to come in on your vacation and talk. And this conversation that I want to have with you, I think, is going to be as much for my benefit as it is for people that are out there that might be thinking about a career in tech, or becoming Red Hat certified or AWS cloud certified. But my first question is, again, it might sound like a real basic question to people that are better off versed than I, but what is Red Hat, and why is it so important to the Linux environment?
That's awesome. And to our listeners, I'm going to try to speak in the most simple terms possible. And I'm going to try to explain some of the complicated terms I'm going to have to throw out here, because I can't speak about Red Hat and not mention some complicated.
Sure,
right?
Yeah.
Okay. So I want to speak about Red Hat, not only like an operating system, but as more than that. So first of all, it's an American software company that provides open source software to enterprises. It's one of the leading providers of enterprise open source solutions. So open source solutions tend to be applications that are open source, meaning that there's a development model behind them that's community powered, and Red Hat as a company is part of this open source development community. And in other words, this means they participate and contribute to the development of the technology that not only benefits Red Hat, but a whole ecosystem of organizations. So, from other companies that may use it to build solutions for enterprises, and also for the enterprises that use it to build their own IT environments. Of course, Red Hat doesn't only contribute code, which is the first thing that comes to our mind when we think about an open source community, but they also help with documentation, with pushing the development effort to adopt standards, and to commercialize the technology. Um, so like we get asked by students a lot, like, did Red Hat create Linux? No, they didn't really create it, but they're part of the development effort that keeps it alive, and not just Linux, but other technologies that I'll
So,
mention.
but that brings up another question. I don't mean to interrupt you, but the I understand there are other Ubuntu and other types
Distribution.
of Linux softwares that people can use. So I guess then what you're saying is Red Hat could be like, like Nike is to Adidas and some of the other shoe brands. It's another brand that you can use Linux, or that operates on Linux, or am I getting that wrong?
Well, it is another brand in itself, but it works with the like a basic that I don't think the shoe equivalence is fair. Uh,
Okay.
so it's like it's based on a specific version of the Linux kernel, for to call it some way. And then they add things to it that make it more secure, more supportable, meaning that it's an open that it's that it's an operating system or a software that a company will be able to use for many years if they need to. That will have security patches and upgrade if any security concern were to come up, which they
Gotcha.
do.
Gotcha.
It's very normal in technology. So Red Hat adds that support, and of course some enhancements that benefit performance, security, and all these things.
So why Red Hat over, some of the other like Ubuntu or something like that?
Okay.
Or do you need Red Hat to use Ubuntu?
No,
Or am
there
I confusing everybody now?
you are you are confusing everybody. And actually I want to go one step behind.
Okay, good.
So Red Hat doesn't only sell this high performing Linux operating system. That's what they're most known for. But they are also in the business of creating solutions for what's called hybrid clouds. And Red Hat has their own model for hybrid clouds. So it's a technology that allows customers to build applications or workloads that can work in any footprint, meaning they can be like at a data center that the company itself manages. It can be at something called the edge, which is a new computing terminology that refers to computing that happens close to the source. So a good example for this is like the data that spacecrafts collect when they go um, to the outer space. Like it's too expensive and too complicated to bring that data from outer space to the Earth. So what happens is they have computing on the aircraft that is able to process the data, maybe ditch some information that we don't have use for, and it just brings a subset of the information. The same
Gotcha.
happens with production plants. Like you want to have computing capacity close to where the things are engineered
The
or
origin. Yeah, close to
exactly.
the origin. Yeah.
Yeah. The other space that Red Hat operates in is in containers and orchestration technologies. So containers are like a very new development inside IT technology, where you have like a smaller footprint of a computer, to call it somehow, and it has everything the application needs to work. So this creates portability for across environments. So you could bring your application from one cloud to a different cloud, or from on-prem to a cloud, or from the cloud to on-prem. So it's a big thing in the computing world in the last years.
Okay.
I wanted to share that terminology so we can level set the conversation, and also understand Red Hat as something bigger than an operating system.
Gotcha. Yeah, okay, that totally makes sense. And it's interesting in talking with a lot of the students because uh, containers are kind of new. That seems to be an area that when I ask what are the areas you're looking to improve, that's usually the answer I get. Is
Yes.
like containers, and I started asking, and why is that? And that's exactly what they tell me. Um, so now there are other
Now,
operating systems that companies can use,
yes.
like Windows and Microsoft and everything. But why are so many businesses choosing Red Hat now?
Okay. So in general, they use Linux operating systems because they have Linux-based operating systems because they have a very large user community, and because it's an open source development model, there's continuous improvement to the software that not only depends on one company, like in the case of Microsoft.
Yeah.
Like Microsoft builds one technology inside Microsoft, maybe consulting with their customers, but it's just Microsoft and the developers that Microsoft has internally. In the case of Linux, it's a global community effort, and therefore the perspectives of companies of all sizes, of all like that have totally different legal requirements or technology ecosystem. That is all part of this development effort. So it's richer in that sense.
Okay.
In general, Linux is also known for having like excellent performance and security, because as an operating system, it's considered more lightweight than something like Windows. And that's because it has, to call it somehow, a modular design. So basically, when you install Linux, when you build something on top of Windows, you kind of have to adopt Windows with everything it has. So it's a very heavy operating system, from something as simple as you have the graphical interface that has security, so can have security issues, can have like a performance cost, like that graphical interface is gonna take space from your memory and stuff like that, your CPUs. So you can operate without these things in Linux. And I'm I'm using a very simple example, but there's other things that you can say, I'm not going to use this specific service in Linux because I don't need it. So therefore I just remove it, and now I don't have to worry about security vulnerabilities on it. I don't have to worry about the performance impact it has, because I'm simply not using it and it's not present. So Red Hat, as Red Hat Enterprise Linux, is very popular among businesses and enterprises of all sizes because it offers additional support for companies using the operating system. And as I mentioned earlier, they guarantee continuous improvements to the operating system. And this has an impact mostly on performance, security, and the tool and the operating system being able to support newer tools and applications.
It sounds like it's extremely versatile and customizable then for
Yes.
businesses, like much more so than many other operating systems where it's kind of like, this is what you get, this is how it works, hope it works for you,
Yes.
where you're able to kind of make it work for you and work for your specific needs and everything. um so that's cool. You would think that I would already know all this stuff, having been with you guys for a year now, but I continue to learn. So are you able to kind of explain a little bit about what this partnership means to Yellowtail, and more specifically, how does it really benefit our students?
Yeah. So, a little background. Red Hat has a program called the Workforce Development Program, where they're partnering with universities and technical training academies like Yellowtail to support career starters and career changers who don't want to go into like a 4-year degree program in a university. And this is motivated because Red Hat, as a company that interfaces with thousands of companies all over the world, again, of all sizes, they are in a position where they can see how customers actually struggle to find talent that has open source skills. And they're very aware of the millions of tech jobs that go unfilled every year. Like this is not a secret in the IT world. Um, so they wanted to promote uh, a way to get into the IT space, especially the open source space, in a way where you don't have to go through that 4-year program if unless you want to, because it's also clear, and this is what I think, not what Red Hat thinks. Universities don't necessarily prepare you with these open source skills. They're trying to give you a very wide curriculum where you're going to learn about a lot of things. And then the job market wants you to know these other things. So there's not an absolute overlap there. So what they've done over the years is they've promoted certifications, tech certifications, where you learn a lot about certain technologies, and then you go and take a certification exam to kind of demonstrate that you know what you know, right? So they're partnering with universities and training schools like us to provide those foundational skills in Linux by offering very high quality training, labs, and of course cert prep. So how this benefits our students? Well, I think that it benefits in several ways. First, by us becoming an official training partner to Red Hat, it gives our program a lot more notoriety and credibility. And this translates into our students being able to leverage the credibility when they go to the job market. And then there's other things, like we will start using official Red Hat content for our cert prep. And this is gonna alleviate some problems we had in the past, or not problems, but it's gonna make us operate smoothly. Because if Red Hat released a new major version of the operating system, let's say they went from 8 to 9, and then the exam was based on version 9, some important things in the operating system changed, and therefore we would have to go and update our training to reflect that. So now we're gonna get all those training updates from Red Hat directly, and that's gonna improve the experience of our students when they go sit for an exam. Um, we will also begin to sell exam vouchers at a lower cost, of course, only to our student community.
Right.
So our students will start seeing those discounts. They have already started, actually.
Yeah.
Um, and we'll have other opportunities for training that will impact both our teachers and our students. So our teachers will go through Red Hat training. They'll have different um, events where they can network with other Red Hat trainers. They can keep current with new technology that they release. And also we're going to be hosting things like webinars and stuff like that with our students.
Right on. Wow, that is so cool. And like, especially having that like direct pipeline there, being the first to learn about all these upgrades and updates and all of that kind of stuff. Talk about keeping it fresh. Yeah.
Yes, and I forgot to mention another thing. One thing that we didn't have before was a program to kind of keep growing your tech career after you became a Linux system administrator. And now we're going to offer a course to become a Red Hat certified engineer, which is like the second level and a very specialized level, I would say, if you're in the Linux and even cloud space, because it helps a lot.
Yeah. I think that's pretty cool. And when you're talking about how, universities definitely teach more of a generalist mentality, like you can go into IT and kind of in a generalist and learn while you're there. And I know that, our students are leaving with a lot of knowledge, but obviously you can't teach everything. So there are still, third party tools that they're learning and different things like that. But being Red Hat certified, obviously a system administrator, a Linux system administrator is the primary goal there. But what other sorts of jobs are our students looking at once they get their certification through us?
Okay, so it's really a student to student kind of thing, and
Sure.
also even where you are, like the jobs in one state are not necessarily the same as in another states. So we have students that go directly into engineer roles, which are more high level. They're able to kind of design and conceptualize solutions. um they're able to explain things that they built. There's others that go to lower level jobs that are still very well paid, but are more operational. So they're supporting users or they're doing monitoring for production level applications. So they're alerting when there's a problem. They're going in and investigating when something is happening. There's other students that go into DevOps roles where they're working more closely with the development process for an application and deploying those changes as they happen. There's others that go into support roles. So let's say if you're a cloud provider. So and by the way, this goes into how cloud and Linux starts to have some interactions.
That was going to be my next question.
Yes.
So nice segue.
Yes. So let's say you're a cloud provider. I'm going to take AWS as an example. AWS has a big portion of their customers that have workloads that run on Linux. So they need people that know Linux that can support those companies that have workloads on Linux. Because if something were to happen at the operating system level, they could pinpoint and troubleshoot what's happening there, or they could help their customers build solutions on top of Linux. So there's this connection there always. So I've mentioned DevOps, support, Linux system administration, Linux engineer. And there's also site reliability engineers. These are called SREs popularly. These are more involved in monitoring performance of applications, of production applications. So like the applications customers are actually using, and improving how they work, how the development process works, and all of that. So there's many different names and
Yeah, it's like I mean, there's so many different opportunities, and like you said, I think it's kind of an individual thing. Certain students are going to gravitate more towards uh, particular disciplines and whatnot. A lot of it, I think, is based on aptitude as well. You know, some people just have more of an aptitude and a love for doing cloud, or some people, you know, are wanting to focus more on cyber or, you know, whatever, but it's a good solid foundation.
yeah.
And somebody, when I started and I was learning a little bit about our different degree programs, um, they told me that, you know, if you know, a natural progression or a good way to do it would be to do the Linux for Jobs program, then do the AWS cloud position, because the cloud is so based on Linux to begin with. Once you have that good knowledge of Linux, it'll everything else will make a lot more sense. Does that make sense what I'm saying there?
It does, though. There's some other difference. Like I would like to clarify, they're not different disciplines. They're different programs. And
Right.
they're both designed for people with no IT experience. Our Linux program is 6 months long and has significantly less content. And I would say it's easier to learn because Linux is more finite as a technology. And in other words, like um there's less to learn in comparison with AWS, because AWS will include Linux and will go far beyond that, right? So, and it's also a very stable technology. Like you'll be learning about things that have existed for very long. Of course, they change, but the base of the technology is the same. AWS on the other side is the AWS for Jobs program is 9 months long. And as I said, you'll have to learn both Linux and AWS. And above all, cloud computing is very fast paced. So you'll have to absorb crazy amounts of information and keep up with it, which is the hardest part. So if I were comparing both programs, I would ask myself one of these three questions. How much time per week do you have to study? Like if you're somebody that has limited time, I would go for the Linux for Jobs. Because again, it doesn't count you out of a cloud computing job. You can find a cloud computing job with Linux knowledge, because I'm I would say that most environments have a hybrid environment, which is an environment that uses public clouds and uses their own data centers on-prem. So you'll be able to work with that. Then the other question I would ask is, how long do you want to commit? Do you want to make this career change in less than a year? Then Linux is probably your best bet there, because the AWS program is 9 months long and then you go to the job market, right? So that's going to take about a year. Uh,
Gotcha.
and then the other thing is, despite both programs being designed for people with no IT experience, we require a little bit more of tech literacy for people going to our AWS program, because it's more complex. That doesn't mean you need to have prior work experience, or you need to know the OSI model. But you need to be a little more handy with computers in general.
Yeah. So that totally makes sense. So here's a question too, and we're going to go like real back to the basics because I get asked this question a lot, and I want to hear your definition. Um, for all the digital immigrants that are out there, what is the cloud? Explain the cloud.
Okay, I'm dying. Digital immigrants.
Yes.
Okay. Um, so I know that for those of you hearing about the cloud for the first time, it's kind of a bit funny to imagine cloud computing. Like we all imagine the clouds. I know it. However, I can guarantee that it's not as funny as we think about it the first time we visualize it. Um, and I can also guarantee you that you've used the cloud before. Like even your grandpa, if he has a phone, Rob, he's used the cloud. So in general, we've all interacted with cloud storage, which is the most common form of cloud computing for individual users. And these tend to be services like iCloud on the iPhone, like where our data is stored. Like Dropbox, if you're using a third-party tool to back up your important files, or even the Google Drive, where we have not only storage, but we also have like a PowerPoint equivalent,
Right.
Google Documents and stuff like that. So those are just some examples to name a few. So in general, when we talk about the cloud, it's kind of things that we can access remotely over the internet. So when something is in the cloud, it means it's stored on internet servers instead of your computer's hard drive. So like I mentioned, the iCloud, we can take 64 terabytes of pictures on our iPhone, but our iPhone itself doesn't need to store those files in it physically. They can be stored on an internet server that Apple manages, and we access that file through the internet. So that's cloud for users, right? But
Totally. I mean, that was a great explanation. I mean, that totally makes sense.
I'm glad because it's not hard to explain these things in simple terms. But there's the more complicated side of cloud computing that's more in an enterprise setting, and it's where we have on-demand delivery. So we're purchasing services on demand as we need them, of IT resources over the internet with a pay-as-you-go pricing. So basically, when we need like a server or a computer that has a set amount of memory or CPU or even disk storage, we use that on demand. So we're not putting capital to buy that server or that computer. We're just using it for however many minutes or hours we use it. Once we don't need it, we power it off and we're not paying for it anymore. We're also able to get almost like virtually any size of computing power. So meaning we can get very, very fast computers. We can have computers that can do very complex mathematical processing that would be very, very expensive to buy if you needed for just some test. So you can run these in a pay-as-you-go pricing, just using it whenever you want. So it's a very big change on how IT environments work, because instead of buying, owning, and maintaining the physical data centers and servers where you had that capacity, you can now access those technology services, which can include computing, storage, databases, and even other application technology on an as needed basis from a cloud provider like AWS.
So yeah, so I mean, more and more companies are going to this because obviously they don't need to, have those huge server rooms and all of that kind of stuff. Do you know, and I would be interested to know, like, what percentage of companies are now using the cloud? I would imagine everybody is going to be going that way here in the future.
Yes, I actually can't recall the stats right now, but most companies do have some footprint in the cloud. And I have to mention, AWS is not the only cloud provider that exists. There's many more. I believe it's AWS is the largest cloud provider globally, both in terms of customers and services. Um, so as I was saying, most companies have a footprint on-prem and in the cloud, and sometimes even in different clouds because they don't want to put all their eggs in a basket, or
Yeah.
maybe they have some uh they 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 sometimes have some uh like legal or data privacy requirements that encourages them to have a presence in different clouds.
Right,
Uh,
right.
so it's very normal for customers to have a footprint on several places, and that's an opportunity for specialization for our students.
So
Um,
so tell me then, and it's probably a very similar answer to what you gave in Red Hat, but how explain the partnership that we now have with them? I'm imagining it's very similar as far as the benefits to us and to our students.
yes, it's very similar. So we recently became what AWS calls an official Amazon training partner. And this partnership allows us to offer Amazon authored training in addition to our own cloud programs. So it's similar in the benefits, but it has some differences. So in the case of Red Hat, we're gonna adopt their content for our certification program, for our certification classes. However, in the case of Amazon, we're gonna offer their authored training. So it's training that they develop. We are gonna teach it, and sometimes we're gonna teach it to our regular student base. Sometimes that's gonna be to other people that come through us through different means. So that's gonna open a new market, and that's gonna add to our course catalog. So we're gonna have new offerings for our students. Um, one of the benefits of this is that it's gonna allow our teachers to go through a very rigorous training and vetting process that's going to impact all of our programs, because now our teachers are going to have to be Amazon authorized instructors. So that's gonna bring a whole deal of credibility too. And it's also going to allow us to work with AWS directly, and we're gonna be updated of service changes in a more structured way, which was daunting for us before.
Yeah, I got.
So
I can only imagine. I mean, it's trying to keep up with everything in the technology world is hard enough as it is. That could be a full-time job for somebody just to, kind of. I ask that question to students a lot. How do you keep up with everything? Because that's kind of part of what you need to be doing.
yeah, so as you were saying, we're gonna get way more brand recognition through this partnership, and that will translate into our students getting recognized in the job market. One of the things we're currently seeing, every AWS for Jobs cohort will have a few people that work at Amazon, and this is not part of the partnership, but we're seeing that they can rise to different levels. Like they'll go from support to engineer, or their managers are mentioning that they're seeing improvements in their performance. So we're really excited about what else we can make of this partnership. And I can't wait. Like I can't
Yeah.
wait to the end of the year to report back on this.
Well, I know it's pretty cool. It seems like, once a week lately, we've been getting these updates through our Yellowtail channels, that like this is happening and that is happening. So congratulations to you, to Juby, to the entire team, because I think we're doing some pretty cool things out there, if I do say so myself. Um,
We are.
so there's another story I think we need to tell here, and I don't know. I don't think that he's going to mind being called out on this. And if he is, then you listeners will not be hearing this part because we will take it out. But we have one student I know of, and maybe there's more, but I know of one student that has gone through both of our programs and got both certifications. And you know who I'm talking about, right?
Yes, we're talking about Matola.
Omatola, my man. And boy, I tell you that it was almost like when he went out there into the job field, he was almost, I don't want to say overqualified, but he was interviewing for some like pretty high up there type positions. And I think, he was making it into these final rounds and then not getting chosen. And I think that has more to do with the other people maybe just having done it longer or something, because he obviously knew his stuff. But man, he landed a pretty sweet senior position as his first gig after he left us and everything. So man, you combine the two and that's some powerful stuff.
Definitely. Omatola is one of our most hardworking students we've seen. Um, our students, like everybody else, we go through with everybody else that gets into the IT field, has to deal with a catch-22. Everybody wants you to know about a lot of things. Like you'll see job descriptions where they're like, I want you to have 15 years of experience in cloud. Well, did the cloud really exist 15 years ago? Are
Yeah,
the
right.
systems you're using in your environment, do they really reflect what existed 15 years ago? So everybody wants experience and knowledge, and sometimes when you go to when you compete against others, their experience will win, definitely. But I think it's a matter of you finding the job that was meant for you. And this sounds cheesy, but I really think it's how it is. Um, because
I don't think it sounds cheesy at all. I think you're absolutely right. I think, there's something out there for everybody, and it might not be easy because you have to find it, you got to keep going at it. But
so, so you
yeah,
have to stay in the game to win, and that's what we saw with Matola. It took him a little bit of time, but he found a senior role at a major international, like global company, and he's going to learn a lot there. He's going to have an opportunity to bring what he knows to the table. So I'm super excited for his future. Because once you start senior, like what's next for you, right? Like,
yeah, exactly. Well, there's always that's the thing that everybody I talk to, and especially our students, are telling me all the time, is one of the things they love the most about this industry is the fact that you're not going to get stagnant, it's not going to get stale. Things are changing constantly. There's something new. When you think you know it all, it's time to move on.
yeah,
And as
this is
long as you stay teachable and keep that passion. I had a friend that was, I haven't seen this guy in years, but just probably the smartest, like book smart guy. I mean, he had good common sense too, but I don't think I've ever been in talking to somebody that was as smart as this guy on like a physicist type level, just brilliant. Had a credible mind. And I asked him one time, I'm like, dude, what's it like to always be the smartest guy in the room? And I was kind of kidding him a little bit, and he looked at me and he goes, well, I'm always looking for new rooms. And I thought, wow, that's such a great answer. It's like, yeah, if you're like already learned everything that you can, it's time to move on. And I think that more than anything, what we teach is the art of being resourceful, the art of thinking on your feet, and we teach you how to learn. And
Yes,
that's the key, because no matter what we teach, you're going to go out there on that first day and somebody's going to throw a curveball at
exactly.
you.
And I love mention that you mentioned this because I don't know for a nurse, but for an IT professional, this is super important. Like, we're constantly thrown in different directions. Like, it's very common for an environment to morph over time, and it morphs because they have to make decisions on whether to keep using a certain software or not, or to expand how they use the software, or they decide to integrate with a totally different tools. So sysadmins and engineers, we are the ones called to lead that change. So we're change makers in our organizations. And in order for us to be those change makers, guess what? We're going to constantly have to be learning these new technologies. So for me, that ended up being like the most satisfying thing about this career, because I didn't even know that I liked being challenged and that I enjoyed learning so much. But when I saw myself constantly building with totally new building blocks every like periodically, that gave me a lot of satisfaction. So I think one of the things that our students get from the program, and it's not like one of our sales point, but it's an actual benefit, is that they learn how to learn. They learn how to go about understanding something that's totally new, and they get to kind of play with that Lego for a while, and then teach others how to use it. And that's super powerful.
Yeah. Um, eh, to me, that's the fun about even what I do. It's having been diagnosed with an itchy brain, I need to have that. I need to keep scratching it. I want something constant, a new challenge or something like that. And you're certainly going to get that if you enter the world of tech.
Yes, and
Many
by
of
the
the Oh, go ahead.
and
Go
this
ahead.
also brings us to another thing. That's also what keeps our career so lucrative, because we're at the forefront. So they know that you came in with the knowledge of sysadmin, but you've learned about 7 different tools in here. You've been you've been at the forefront, you've been leading that. You can speak about these other 7 technologies as much as you can about Linux after 2 3 years, then you're automatically worth more every year. So that's a huge point for people considering and a career in the IT space.
Yeah, absolutely. If you're somebody that enjoys the challenge, that enjoys, I should say, constantly being challenged and constantly learning new things, it's a great career to build on. There's really no ceiling.
Yep.
If you think about it, there's no ceiling like you have in some jobs. It's like, okay, you become the manager and that's it, right? Now what? Here it's like you can just go forever. So um man, that we're already getting at about almost an hour here, and I really don't want to go too much longer because I know, number one, Zoe needs tacos and and you guys got to get back out in the sun there and everything. Is there any last bit of advice or information you'd like to share with our students or our potential students or anybody?
Um, yeah, I'll go back to exactly how I started. I was talking about imposter syndrome, how I
Mhm.
still feel it. I know imposter syndrome may be even keeping some of our potential students, or even our students in our classes, from showing up to the interviews, from scheduling that career success session. Schedule it. apply to the jobs, apply to the programs. You have to go through it to actually make it.
Yeah.
Um, don't let the fear stop you. Fear has been with me at every point of my career, but I've made the move with it. So if there's anything you can learn from me today, it's that.
And I bet you look back on those things that you were originally fearful of and they seem so trivial now.
Oh my God.
Yeah. It's like, I can't
Trivial,
believe I worried about that.
trivial is the word.
Yeah.
Like,
Well, Paloma, thank you so much for coming on, and enjoy your well-deserved time off. We will obviously be talking to you when you get back, but I appreciate you coming on. And for those of you out there, again, my name's Rob Coble. I don't think I ever introduced myself. I'm the career success manager here at Yellowtail, and this is Yellowtail Talks Tech. We'll be coming back with new episodes every first Monday of the month. So I hope you'll join us, and I hope you'll feel free to leave comments, suggestions, ideas of topics that you would like to hear in the comments below. And again, thank you, Paloma, and we'll talk to you all soon.
thank you, Rob.